Now the 4 sentences labeled, okay, so you need to find out the sequence, okay. So let's again find out, let's go by the same, let's find out in case if any of them can be the introductory sentence. Officially, Soviet ideology was arguably far removed from the nebulous, elusive dreams like nature of Kafkian, okay, repressive authorities. It had far more in common with the Orwell's boot stamping in a human face forever, okay. Might be an opening sentence, okay, but in case if you're going to read it thoroughly, okay, so Orwell, Soviet, these are all the abbreviation, okay. They mention Soviet Union, okay, and then the Soviet, okay, and this sentence mentioned George Orwell, okay, it mentions Orwell, okay. So by that logic, okay, in case if you remember the rules of the parajumbles, okay, so the full name will gonna precede the sentence rather than the abbreviated form, okay. So this thing is sure that this will be preceded by either the sentence number 2 or the sentence number 4, okay. So sentence number 2, while the latter, okay, so the latter, that means that there needs to be something which is former, okay. So again, cannot be the introductory sentence, he, not an introductory sentence, quite clear that a 4 is your introductory sentence, okay. And one thing is clear that now Soviet Union will gonna precede the Soviet, okay. So maybe 4, okay, there is some letter, okay. So 4, 2, and 1, okay. So far we know this thing, okay. There is something which is latter, okay. So there has to be something, since 4 is the introductory sentence, 2 will be here, 1 will be here, then of course the 3 is something which is telling us the former, and then we're going to talk about latter, which is being highlighted in the 3, okay. Because why we cannot place 4, 2, and 1, okay, because there's nothing former which is being highlighted here, okay. So highlighted in the 4th option, okay. So by that logic, 4, 3, 2, 1 is your correct answer, okay. But that was just a trick to actually by that logic, sorry, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, okay, it can be the case, okay. Sorry, I got in a wrong direction, okay. So I thought that it was going to be an easy, okay, but again there can be the multitude of frames which can be formed. So one thing we are pretty sure is that the 4th is a 1 sentence, okay, and 1 will gonna come after 2 for sure, okay. So maybe it can happen that 1 will gonna come immediately after 2, maybe it can happen that it can be like this, okay, or maybe it can happen that the 1 framing could be 4, 3, 2, 1, okay, or it can be 4, 2, 3, 1, okay, or it can in any of the two, okay. So it should be either 4, 2, 3, 1, or it can be 4, 3, 2, 1, okay. So let's see what is can be the correct version, okay. So the inscrutable nature of power in Kafka's writing, okay. So inscrutable, okay. Now inscrutable is something which you cannot scrutinize, okay, which you cannot actually difficult to understand, okay, which is something which is mysterious, okay. So let's say the mysterious nature of power in Kafka's writing may be the reason real life regressive regimes, okay. Now can you see real life regressive regimes, okay. Again, it is presenting it in a very general manner, okay. So definitely our short our opening sentence, okay. So the inscrutable nature of power in Kafka's writing may be the real reason real life regressive regimes haven't hated or feared him as much as say George Orwell, okay. So the kind of the writing which the Kafka's write, okay, which is a mysterious, okay. So that is the reason that the real life repressive regimes, okay, does not hated or feared him as much as they do the George Orwell, okay. Now, after this, okay, we said that 3 can come. He only fell into disfavor, okay. So we don't know who this he is actually referring to, okay. So he only fell into disfavor after Soviet troops, okay. Now again, see, this is an easy link here, okay. It also says Soviet, okay. So one thing is clear, okay, that 4 will be followed by 2 because it is stating Soviet Union, okay. And then we have to see that 3 will come or the 1 will come, okay. So that is the case, but the 4 and 2 is an obvious link, okay. But let's see again, okay. So the inscrutable nature of power in Kafka's writing may be the reason real life representative regimes haven't hated or feared him as much as say George Orwell, okay. While the latter, okay. So the latter here is actually the George Orwell, okay, or the George Orwell writings, okay, because Kafka is being listed first and then the George Orwell is written second, okay. So while the latter wasn't published in the Soviet Union until its very last almost 3 years, okay. So we now know that what this real life repressive regimes, they're actually the Soviet Unions, okay. So what is being stated that they does not hated or feared from Kafka, but they feared from Orwell, okay. while the latter, okay, in fact, okay, the latter wasn't published in the Soviet Union until its very last almost 3 years, okay. Kafka broke through in 1964 when his stories were first published in a literary journal, okay. But still, they do not feared Kafka, okay, but they feared George Orwell, which came much later than George Kafka, okay. But because of the Kafka's, let's say, mysterious writing, okay, he only fell into disfavor, okay, after Soviet troops invaded Czechoslovakia and the censor saw a link between his work and the ill-fated Prague Spring, okay. Now again, the problem here is, who is this he, okay. So he is actually Kafka, okay. There's one thing that you need to understand, that the true parajumble is actually, the correct answer is the 4231, okay. Now 4 is the link, 2 is the link, okay. Again, with the Soviet Union comes before and then the Soviet, so 2 makes it, and again there is a link, okay, because the latter here is actually refers to the George Orwell, okay, and it is telling us the contrast, okay, that no doubt that the George Orwell came quite last, okay, at the time when this particular people were almost free, okay, but the Kafka was there initially, okay, where Kafka broke in 1964, okay. So he only fell into disfavor after Soviet troops invaded Czechoslovakia. Okay, so by the time this George always was writing, okay, they were almost 3 years. Okay, so at the 3 years, they're not gonna invade anything. Okay, so when the Soviet Union invade, so maybe that is the time period of a Kafka. Okay, are you understanding the logic? Because by the time the George Orwell came into the picture, that was almost 3 years, okay? So he only fell into disfavor after Soviet troops invaded Czechoslovakia, okay? So invasion may be done, cannot be done in almost 3 years, okay? Are you getting the point, okay? So that is the case that the he here actually refers to the Kafka, okay? And the censor saw a link between his work and the ill-fated Prague Springs. Official Soviet ideology was arguably far reduced from the nebulous, elusive, dreamlike nature of the Kafkian repressive authorities. It has far more in common with Orwell's bootstrapping on a human face forever. So this serves as a concluding sentence. Okay, why is it kind of a concluding sentence? Because it's kind of a restatement of the option number 4. Okay, so option number 4 is also saying that because of the mysterious writing of the Kafka, he was not being hated or feared. Okay, and he's also telling us that the official Soviet ideology was arguably far removed from the nebulous, elusive, dreamlike nature of the Kafkian repressive authorities, okay, and it has more to do with the common George Orwell, okay. So that is the reason that this Kafka was not being hated, okay, but the Orwell was being hated. So it's kind of it's kind of, let's say, providing you with the concluding, the summarizing part, okay, and again reinstating the fact that why, or giving you the reason or the logic that why this Orwell is being more hated rather than the Kafka. Okay, so that is the case. Okay, sometimes, yeah, you're gonna figure out that you're gonna feel that 1 should come before and then 3 should come third. Okay, 4 to 1 3 could be the case. Okay, but then here we are talking about Kafkian nature of the Kafkian representative authority. Okay, so we are not talking about any person. Okay, so in case if we're gonna say that a 1 will gonna come first and then the 3 will gonna come, so here the person who is being talked about is Orwell, okay, not the Kafkian. So we cannot say, in case if we're gonna say he, then it means that it is actually used for Orwell, okay, but that is not a case, okay, because we know one thing by the logic is that the Orwell came at a time when they were almost 3 years, okay, and this Kafka was there when they actually invaded, okay, so he actually states for the Kafka, so it has to be placed after 2, okay, so 4 to 3 1 is your correct answer.